What's up, podcast? Welcome to episode 29. I'm your host, Ryan Lucas. This week I have a special guest. His name's Ted Pennell. Ted is a second-generation lineman who originated on the East Coast, made his way to the West, and Ted's an absolute beauty. I've known Ted for quite a while. He is constantly giving back to this trade. He's got some really cool stories, and I think you're really going to like this episode. Before we get into this episode, I just want to let you know about the store. I've got stickers and shirts up on the store so far. Hats are coming soon. Just ordered them. I know I keep saying that, but they're on their way shortly. So go check it out. You can get there at powerlinepodcast.com. You can also reach the store via the Instagram page at Powerline Podcast. And one more word from our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Tallman Equipment. And let's go to a word from Tallman.
Trust. It's hard to earn and easy to lose. That's why at Tallman Equipment Company, we work hard every day to do the right thing for our customers and everyone that puts their trust in us. Because at the end of the day, what really matters is who we help get the job done right and get back home. Trust. Tallman Equipment.
All right, guys, there you have it. Tallman Equipment can be found at tallmanequipment.com as well as on social at Tallman Equipment. All right, guys, let's get into this week's episode.
Here we go.
Here we go. Ted Pennell, welcome to the show.
Hey, buddy. Glad to be here.
I'm pretty excited about this one. Obviously, just like all of them. This is a pretty sweet pad you got here, recording at your house. It's pretty nice.
Oh, welcome, buddy. Welcome to the Fraser Valley.
This view, like Tracy was just saying, this view never gets old, hey?
Yeah, you know what? It was a bit of a selling feature for sure when we moved in, and it was It's, don't take it for granted for sure. Have a look every day.
I like to start these things kind of and run them chronologically. So, where's the family from and where are you from originally? Start there.
Well, from Newfoundland. Pretty much grew up with my old man was a lineman for Newfoundland Power. Grew up in a small town and then moved to the city kind of mid-school. And you know what, it was awesome. Like, you know, back in the smaller town, grew up with a bucket truck or a digger truck coming in, you know, when he was on call or whatever else, and so we'd be out towing around that thing. So you know what, it was good, man. Moved to the city, kind of fell away from like the outdoors stuff a little bit more and all that stuff, and never seen the equipment for like I used to when I was growing up in the younger years. So kind of got lost in it. Dad was one of those guys, never spoke about work a whole lot, and so when I finished high school, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I actually, similar path to you, I got out and did a semester of architectural technology.
Oh yeah.
And then it wasn't for me when I found out really what it was all about. So Dad made mention of, you know, maybe trying to trade or whatever else for getting into the power line thing. So anyway, I went to school back in a small town just outside of St. John's, and similar to Raylene, I actually listened to her story there. Went to the Cabot College for a 9-month pre-apprenticeship schooling, and it was actually a phenomenal course. We did our book work and then basically in the field for half the day, climbing poles, doing whatever. So it was awesome. A great way to learn, right?
So describe where it is on a map and kind of what growing up in this area was like.
So St. John's is basically the most easterly tip of Canada. So weather-wise, it was, you know, you're getting every element of weather, right? Summer was decent, but always a breeze. Winter, you're getting, you know, snow, sleet, whatever, right? So a lot of days we go out in school, here you are, just a young buck starting school, and and there's a bunch of ice. There's an inch or two of ice on the pole, and you're of course you're climbing up that. So you learn pretty quick there to to dig in or do whatever you had to do to make it work.
Did Dad work for a utility or a contractor, or what was his kind of?
Yeah, so Newfoundland Power basically has, unlike BC here, it has just a utility, and then the contractors are just basically pole setting contractors, right?
Okay.
Not someone that really everyone's jumping to go work for. Everyone wants to work for Newfoundland Power or Newfoundland Hydro, which is the transmission portion, right?
Okay.
So Dad he had 38 years in total before he retired. Made his way through, the apprenticeship, lineman to foreman and whatever else, and general foreman. So when I finished up school, like there was absolutely zero work in Newfoundland for anything. So after I finished my course, the writing was on the wall that I had to leave. I worked at a cable company for about a month and made $6 an hour, basically in the back building line extenders and whatever else that the guys were putting on the hardware on the poles and whatever else in the line. And when that pretty much ended, after a month or so, the only job I get is at Walmart, basically unloading a truck. Which no offense, but I just wanted to do. I wanted to be in the line trade, obviously, after doing the course.
So what bred that into you? Like seeing your dad come home, you're just saying like bring buckets and diggers home maybe once in a while. Like what drove you to like want to do this? And
it's kind of funny. Like the one thing that kind of stands out, and it might sound a little bit cheesy there, but I grew up in the younger years around the trucks all the time, like literally as a young guy, like 9 years old, out running around and running to the truck, and never seen anything of any substance other than a pickup truck in the driveway for a bunch of years. And when I went to the trade school, the first day I walked in, you get that smell of like the leather and metal or something. I don't know what it is, but it's in every line truck that's out there.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got a whiff of that, when that was it. I was sold.
The stench of the truck.
The stench of the truck. Yeah. Maybe that's what hockey players play hockey for. They like that.
It's like the smell of the dressing room.
I don't know.
That's beauty.
Yeah.
So, what got your dad into it?
Yeah, kind of a funny story. He grew up in a small fishing town called Trepassey, which is about 2 hours outside of St. John's. And the community was pretty much a fishing town. So, which is funny because his father actually worked he's a distributor for a grocery store and had his own store in town. But all of my uncles and Dad's brothers they were involved with the fishery. Dad initially went out with a group of guys, and of all the brothers, he was a pretty straight-laced fella. But they took a bottle on board, a couple bottles on board a dragger one time on a trip, and there was no tolerance for it. So anyway, they ended up having to miss a trip. And while he was off, a fella from Newfoundland Power came in looking for a meter reader.
What?
So Dad, hanging out at the local shop in town, ended up grabbing another job to make some money, and kind of I thought that was the start of it. So
that's a story like I usually ask this question to people, like what got you into the trade. I think that one tops the cake.
Yeah. It's pretty cool because some lady came up to Dad, I don't know, it's probably 10 years ago now, but came up back in the day when you were reading meters, you actually collected also in these small towns. And Dad has a receipt for like $2.37 for the full month or 2 months of electricity, right? So it's pretty cool to see it. He has it posted. He has a little...
That's awesome. That's pretty cool. Imagine that. Imagine collecting a utility bill as you go around and read the meter too.
Yeah.
Don't want to mess that one up.
Yeah, you know what? From there, he basically went into went from meter reading, and then they were looking for draftsmen and whatever else, and he went into the office, and then basically just worked his way into a line career.
Did he end up enjoying it?
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, he went through all the elements of distribution pretty much because that's all Newfoundland Power was. But, over the years, he ended up going to Jamaica for Hurricane Gilbert in '88.
Cool.
And then went down to Cayman Islands a couple times for one of the big hurricanes or whatever else. So you know what? It wasn't just, being stuck in Newfoundland, there was a couple little highlights of his career for sure.
Being on the East Coast, I imagine you get a little bit more easier access to hurricane work. Yeah. I know I've done it a couple of times from the West Coast here, and I think you've been a part of some of that before too, and it's usually quite the adventure to get all the way across the country, especially if you're driving a rig. We flew, but some of those guys have driven all the way across and just for the hurricanes.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a crazy adventure just to get there.
Oh, yeah. That was, for them, I mean, Newfoundland Power is owned by Fortis. And so Belize is tied to Fortis, obviously. Okay. And so that was how the connection was made there for how those guys down.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Who organizes that? Like the utility organized getting people there, or you just find your own?
Oh, yeah. I'm assuming just with the tie with Fortis. I mean, I'm sure. I never really asked for the details on that, but I'm just assuming. Yeah, that's basically how it all went down.
So when you got into it, you made the decision kind of right away. You went to a bit of technical school, doing some other things, and you're like, enough of this.
Yeah. Well, growing up in Newfoundland, there, it's not like you're literally, you are isolated a little bit from the rest of the world, and technology wasn't where it was at either. So, I can remember looking for companies on like microfiche in the library and shit, just trying to find a way and where to go and how to get there and where I could find a job. And so, man, I obviously being from Newfoundland, I wanted to stay closer to home. So I started from Nova Scotia, made my way west, and basically the only sniff that I could get of work was on the West Coast, and so.
Did you just take a chance and come across?
Yeah, man.
Like this is what I harp on some of the younger guys because they get. I'm not gonna say they get a bit of entitlement or whatever, but they don't like to travel, or they like to just stick it out at home, and they don't go anywhere when they're asked to go places. And call it whatever you want to call it, but that's not like it was before.
Yeah. Well, when I finished school. We were obviously all 12 guys in the class or whoever it was. We're watching for job postings like night and day. And Newfoundland Hydro hired one person. They were hiring one person. So all 12 of us ended up going in there, and then whoever else outside of that particular year of school went for the interview for one spot. Yeah. I never ended up getting it. So I knew I had to leave. So I basically... I sold my motorcycle. I picked up $3,000 and a plane ticket, and I just jumped on a plane. I had a place to go, sleep for 2 weeks, and it ended up being the cheapest deal for an airline ticket was a 4-day turnaround, and I figured, I'll go out there, and if I have 4 days, I'm 20 years old or 21 years old, and I'm thinking to myself, shit, if I get a bad vibe in 4 days, at least I have an out. But anyway, I literally had. My ex at the time now, we came out, we had 2 suitcases each and $3,000, and that was the start. And so
you found something when you got out here?
No, so right off the hop, I got off the plane. We had a place to stay in Surrey, right in Strawberry Hill area, which is racially there's like every culture there is, which is unlike Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And so, we were like,
where are we?
Yeah,
what is going on?
We were wondering what the hell. So anyway, it was a bit of an adventure.
What year is this? Or what? Like
it's in 97.
97.
So it was a bit of an adventure. So it was exciting at the time. So we get out the plane, and we just decided I'm gonna just first off find a job, start paying bills, and get a place of our own, and do whatever, and then basically from there, start finding out what I have to do to find work in the line trade.
Right.
So I did everything, man. I literally did like spring cleanup, garbage pickup, to I unloaded trucks in a warehouse for 3 months, did whatever.
Yeah.
And basically what happened is there was a fella, Lloyd Freak, actually, you probably know.
Yeah.
And Lloyd was taking care of a company, Arctic Power at the time, and being from Newfoundland, Dad had his ear to the ground, trying to help me out. And someone mentioned Lloyd's name. I gave him a call, and of course, being a young guy from the home country, I pretty much jumped. He took me on
from the mothership,
and it was literally, he said, I have a month's work for you. And so I went to the boss at the time at the warehouse I was working at, and I told him the story, and he was quite understanding, actually a really good guy, and said, hey, if it doesn't work out, then come back. Well, I haven't looked back since.
Well, that's pretty cool, though.
So it's been, so here we are now, like, you know.
So you started out, you got a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit in you as well. We'll get into how that came about, but like, what was the first little while like? You started just doing some basic groundwork. What kind of jobs did you get into? How did that all go?
Well, no different than every apprentice that goes out there. I did the schooling, and I did 9 months of schooling, and of course I was gung-ho to start an apprenticeship and become a journeyman lineman, like faster than what you know. You're not patient, right?
Yeah.
So looking back, I kind of find it funny because I wish I was an apprentice now sometimes.
So pause there. What's your advice for those people? Because that's a question I honestly get asked nonstop all the time. And you can see it in the young guys. They just want to, like, how do I get from here to the bucket and up in the air and done like tomorrow?
And I think you just had to be a bit of a sponge. You need to soak it all in and just, you know, try to find yourself around some good company there, because who you work for a lot of times is, but you know, everyone will keep a good guy. If you're not a good apprentice, then everyone will try to get rid of you. Now you're bouncing around to the, you know,
and learn how to be patient.
And be patient, yeah. But show the work ethic, show that you're interested. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And I think in our era, that group, if you weren't into it, then you were kicking rocks pretty much. Like, you had to be into it. So, and I was. So, you know, I was pretty fortunate. Worked with a couple real good foreman during my apprenticeship, and the company that I worked for at the time was basically like 9-10 employees.
Okay.
It was a company that just moved down to the Lower Mainland, which is the south end of BC, and honestly, the owner took me on like I was one of his own.
That's cool.
And
you can do that with 9 or 10. A similar background, I guess, or start up in the trade. Yeah, it's cool. It's neat. It's a little more intimate, and yeah.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot to be said for a small company. And
what kind of work would they do at the time? Being down in the city, was it just kind of city work and distribution work, or did they get into some?
Yeah, that time there was a lot of stringing in downtown Vancouver alleys and pole replacement and the typical distribution work, right? But it was, I look back at how we worked then and what we did in a day, and you know, health and safety obviously wasn't as big of a factor back then, and man, oh man, sometimes I wonder how you're still here, you know what I mean? Like, we just worked our asses off.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a lot of linemen that can probably say the same thing.
Yeah. So, you know, it was one of those groups there. The owner, Jim Dooley, was pretty fortunate to have a group of guys that actually knew how to work and wanted to build the company and make it better. Mm-hmm. And so it did. I mean, over the years, you know, I spent 13 years there, and over the course of time, you know, I topped out, and again, due to the good training there, I was kind of thrown a subby job way too early as far as I'm concerned. But again, you just jump into it. You don't even know any better.
I totally understand. It was the same sort of way, like same sort of environment. When it's a small company, you guys are in a bigger city center, so same sort of thing. But small company, a small town, you're forced to be a leader no matter what stage you're at. And I've said that before. Like the day I topped out was the day I became a sub-foreman.
Yeah.
And you're just forced into it. It's like, okay, here's the book. Here you go.
It was literally the school of hard knocks, man.
Yeah.
Like, you learn the hard way a lot of times. I mean, again, thankfully you had some guys that you get some advice for, but you know, you went out in the field every day, and man, I can remember I'm literally in some days drawing pictures for managers at BC Hydro
on the door of your truck,
just trying to explain what I did or didn't do right. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I look back, I wouldn't change a thing. You know, and it kind of taught you to kind of lead and just made you better at the industry, you know, in the trade and at the industry, and then I don't know, it helped all the way. You
mentioned good people and good mentorship, so that was an important part of that section of life.
Oh yeah, and you know, I look now at where those people are. Mm-hmm. Like most of the guys are still in the industry, and they're all like leaders or trades trainers, or you know, I mean, they're top-notch linemen that are still involved. A lot of them went to the utility, and Man, like I was pretty fortunate for a small company, because there was a lot of big companies around at the time and competing. Like I looked around lots and seen the nice new shiny trucks and the big company and whatever else, and I stuck it out with these guys because they were just top notch, good linemen.
When it's where you're from, it's where you're from. Right? When it's in the blood.
Yeah.
So 13 years with Arctic. What made you step out? Was the next step, let's start my own gig and do my own thing, or how did that come?
Well, man, there was a few things happen along the way.
Like, what makes you come to that decision?
Oh, buddy,
especially in the power line industry. I think it's a little tougher nowadays. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it was really tough then as well to make that decision. But I feel like making that decision right now would be a really hard one. Like, I'm just going to start my own thing.
Well, what happened is, while working for the company there, you get older and you're. So I started in '97, '06. So I had a few years in there. It was starting to become. It was a real busy time. But just before that, we had talked about, succession planning and whatever else for the company, and so there was some talk about involvement with the company, like even on a buy-in level or whatever else.
Oh, yeah.
And I look back at it, and at that time you're young, and so you're kind of putting some of your things in life on pause for that
Sure.
that opportunity came, and it never ended up coming, which was discouraging. Like looking back, I shouldn't probably been so discouraged. And again, the patience thing and just being young, I don't know if it was the right decision, but it was a decision. And then on top of that, a couple things happened. Basically in '09, as I'm going through all this stuff, Olympic Village, we were doing a job down there, and I ended up getting burned pretty bad. So that messes with you also, right? So it was all that going on with this.
So that was with Arctic?
That was with Arctic,
that incident? And Olympic Village they were starting to build up the place for the athletes to stay. Just for the listeners, the place for the athletes to stay, because Vancouver was going to host the 2010 Winter Olympics.
Yeah, so
that's the area you're working in?
So at the time was a huge deal. Arctic ended up getting the contract to build platform banks for all, I think it was 11 or 12 cranes at the time. So basically we had built literally like all the platforms in this small area of Vancouver, where the basically built these condos for Olympians and whatever else, all some infrastructure or whatever. And at the time that I was burned, it was the largest construction site in North America.
Oh wow!
So that particular day, you go in there, you do all this major work, you're building amongst a ton of trades, whatever else. It's busy as hell. And the one day I go in there basically with not a care in the world, and it was just to do this 5-minute job. There was a little bit of shoddy workmanship there in all honesty, between the electrical and the power line side, where when they made the connection with the two bolts there, they made it kind of mid-pole, and they never went up to the bus work.
Okay. So
they decided that they wanted to put like a bell housing like they would normally put on ground level.
Okay.
They wanted to put this mid-pole, which was, I thought
was
it was
this
stupid.
A temporary thing, or was this just like?
It was going to be, I guess temporary is what the construction of the place was, but it was a semi-permanent thing, right?
Sure.
Anyway, I never thought too much of it. I'm 33 years old. I got pretty much feel like now, I'm in a subby now for like 7-8 years. I feel like this is a no-brainer. It's like a walk in the park. Go up, throw this thing on. I never quite understood why they were doing it this way, but whatever. Well, when I got up in position, it was just myself and one of the guys from the office. I had probably about 4 or 5 different little jobs to do for him that day, like go grab some info off a nameplate and whatever else, just to kind of get some jobs going. Yeah. And this is the one that bit me in the ass. Like I climbed a pole. I looked at the connections. They were very tightly done with no insulation on these 2 bolts, 347-600. And so, not to disrupt anything with the site, I figure, I'll feather this bell housing in on this, little bird's nest of 2 bolts, and I'm going for lunch later on with this guy that I'm with downtown Vancouver. Like a great day.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as I start feathering this housing in, the bell, Sure enough, I knocked one connector into the other, hit a bare spot, and all hell broke loose, right? So at that time, FR wasn't a big thing, so I had on, a pair of work jeans that I probably wore like 2 days before.
Sure.
And, luckily I had my belt around my waist. I'm probably just about 20 feet up. And when all hell broke loose, man, it never kicked the fuses right away. It burned for,
so
it
it's just
seemed like forever, but
massive
all
blow up.
of, it was basically like a white light, like almost like a welding flame is what a best way to describe it, but big. And it ended up catching my jeans on fire, and I couldn't get it out. And at the time, I climbed a pole. Like I said, I'm just climbing up. I climbed up over a panel, and then just climbed up over the some tech cable. And when I was in position, I didn't really think nothing of it. I had to punch in a bunch of lags, and honestly, I never wore a pair of gloves because I was handling these. At the time, right? It's just stupid. But anyway, when everything broke loose, I couldn't get the fire out, and honestly, I probably went blank for a split second.
Sure.
I couldn't get it out with my hands, so I just launched. I unbelted and launched to the ground. And luckily, there was a lady there who'd just come in, a construction, one of those snack trucks, and she seen everything happen. Well, man, the minute I hit the ground, she was on me with one of those big jugs of water right away.
So you were on your own there too.
Put me out. Well, I was with one guy from the office, and man, to this day, like it was pretty traumatic for him watching,
100%.
right? But the lady put me out, thank God, and so I'm lying there on the ground, and now here I am with like, like I said, on the busiest construction site. So you can imagine the health and safety side of things. So literally, I have 10 people around me right off the hop, and they're just trying to get me to settle down, right? And of course, at the time, I never felt any pain at all, other than I was embarrassed like that had happened. So I was just trying to explain, everything's fine. Here we go.
Yeah.
Well, obviously the damage was done. So I ended up in the burn ward. Well, a bit of a funny story, actually. I'm lying there.
How do you get a funny story?
So the way that your belt sits is over your crotch, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And I'm looking down, and I see my jeans are burnt to shit over.
You're checking.
Yeah. So I'm worried about my junk, basically, right? Not gonna lie to you. And so
legs.
Yeah. So anyway, they're cutting off my jeans and shit. Not because I got my head like up at a 90, pretty much, just looking down to see what's going on. And they're trying to get me to relax, and I made a comment to one of them. I said, "Hey, like if that's gone, then just light me on fire again, because like it's one of my favorite pastimes, right?" So
that's fucking awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, man, like long story
short,
short,
you're all good, right?
I'm all good, man. I'm all good.
Survived that one.
Yeah. But I was pretty fortunate there. But what I ended up
Did you break anything too, or?
I never broke anything.
Wow.
But I was, I kind of slid out an embankment on the way down. But man, it was the burns there. Like you hear about people getting burnt. It was probably the worst experience. Well, it was the worst experience that I've ever gone through in my life. Like the pain and I spent 3 weeks in burn ward.
Yeah. What's the recovery look like from something like that? Like, what did you have to go through?
Yeah, so I had full skin graft on one leg, so I got a chunk of leather on my whole front of my one side, and then my hands. Honestly, like I'll never forget the pain in your hands, like your fingertips and everything are just so sensitive. Like it literally melted the fingertips.
Does that stay for a long time?
The pain, yeah. Like
in the sensitivity?
Yeah, sensitivity. I mean, it changed everything. Like, not only the physical part of it, but, one thing I was chatting about doing this today is the burns and the healing process. That was one thing, that you deal with. But the big thing is how it affects everyone else too, right? So, at the time I had... I get home from the hospital, and now here's a guy that, I'm used to going 100 miles an hour, and now all of a sudden I'm confined to a bed.
Yeah.
And of course, the day I got back from the hospital, a day later, I want to go out for a walk because I'm feeling good. And what does that do? It just, infection sets in, and now I'm set back another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The frustration was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And now I have basically a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a wife at home. And man, I tell you, like I look back at how, like looking back now, of how it affected that side of things. Not only, the company that I was working for and all the guys, but like when you're telling your 3-year-old to get the hell out of the room because you're hurt, it it doesn't feel very good at the end, right? So getting through all that, and then obviously, I go from a guy that's very comfortable and confident in my work to now being embarrassed because, I was one of the poster boys per se, you know what I mean?
Sure.
At the company, felt pretty good. I was one of the leaders, and now all of a sudden I go to the guy that screwed up. So the embarrassment, it was kind of devastating in all honesty. Like you go back to like now everyone's looking at you and you're just, yeah, it's shitty.
You know what? Like, thanks for sharing the story. First of all, there's a lot to learn from that. Wow. Like, how many times I look back spending 15 years on the tools, how many times you just go into a day thinking the same thing that you thought. It's a great day. It's nice and sunny out. Good area. I'm going to do this quick job. Go grab some lunch. Super chill. Head back to the shop. Whatever the circumstance. We've all had those days, no matter what it is. Like out on the right of way. Oh yeah, I got the super simple. Whatever. Kick these phases. Whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
How quickly it can go sideways on you. And that's why we have got to this point with health and safety and with the precautions and the things that we do, like wearing FR gear and wearing your gloves, your secondary gloves, if you do that in the places you work in this world, we do here, and safety glasses. It's why all these things exist, and it happens so fast, and can totally change the course of life for a while or you're extended.
Yeah, and that is the thing about it. Even though we were a small company, and like I said, the FR wasn't in place and all that stuff wasn't there, the company actually did really lead a pretty safety conscious environment.
It was different times. It was a lot like
I can remember back in the day, it was acceptable to free climb a little bit, right? And you're belt over to secondary, and guys were unbelting and doing whatever. And I can remember back in the day, and this is. You're probably talking like early 2000s, and Barry Organ, one of the foremen there, he said, hey, he says, if you go up there and you do that and you fall, he says, now you have a house and a wife and all that stuff. He says, who's going to pay for that?
Yeah.
And so right off the hop, it was like I was pretty safety conscious at the time. It just happened to be a gravy day, and I let my guard down, in all honesty. And I never thought nothing of it. I can remember when I seen the connectors at the time, wondering if I could throw some tape in there or whatever, but they were just so tightly done. The crane is operating, and I didn't want to disrupt the whole site. Yep. And then, like I said, and maybe that's a lesson that I like to throw out to everyone is if it doesn't feel right, chances are it's not right.
Yeah.
So, I could have shut that crane down for literally 5 minutes to put a bead of tape on there and then had them back running again, and then I would have been not telling this story, right?
Yeah.
And so it's that's important,
learning from these experiences and from other people's experiences. It sucks for that person, but this is a great example of, if you're out there right now and you're listening to this and you're in the same scenario, which you will be. I remember tons of times too, just, whatever, that 2 bolts. I'll remember that thing doesn't have a bit of tape on it.
Yeah.
Like, if that's all it takes.
And that's one thing, when we do safety meetings, it kind of irritates me when some of the utilities, for incident reporting and all that stuff, when they, instead of taking it and like being welcoming to all these incident reports, they shit kick you, and basically tell you get in trouble for, if you screwed up somewhere. Like, they should be encouraging the incident reporting stage and then getting it out to everyone. Yeah. I find in BC alone, like, it's almost internal in the company that you're working for, and it doesn't really get out to the rest of the province here, right? That we're working. It should make its way out. I mean, I learn from every single thing that happens.
Yeah, You're 100% right. Every scenario has a learning moment with it, or a learning opportunity with it. And unfortunately, legal blocks that sometimes, and all that other BS. But there's great lessons to be learned in it. That's part of why I'm doing this, to help get those stories out in a different way to even more people, because the story's there now.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's good, man. It's a good thing you're doing what you're doing here. It's awesome.
How long did recovery take in all?
I jumped into it probably a little sooner than what I should have. Like, the incident happened in March, and I mean, man, I was back. The company ended up getting a job that it was pretty intriguing. I ended up jumping back on the tools a little sooner than what I should have. I can remember going to work sometimes dizzy, almost from just being weak from healing. And you know, they treated me very well during the company did during the time, and so I almost felt obligated to get back there and help them out and try to pay back for lost time.
Just a different mindset back then, hey?
Yeah, it was, man. They treated me well, I have to say. I look back on them at that company, and not many people would have ever left, in all honesty. But yeah, like, moving along there, it just felt like I needed to do something different.
So that was the catalyst for starting something different?
Yeah,
kind of,
part of it, in all honesty, I was probably running a little bit scared at the time. Like, I needed something different, I really wanted off the tools after these. I went back on the tools. I did some deadline work, and a couple of times, I'd say, like, most of the times that I went back in the field with some hot secondary or whatever else, it was just haunting me like no tomorrow. I fought through it, and to this day, like, I'm still honestly active. But I tell
Honestly,
you, man, I don't think about it.
It can be a hint of PTSD style stuff.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It'll haunt me. Well, whatever. It's kind of one of those things where I have to do what I have to do, but it makes you just more aware too. So when I get in these scenarios, I kind of know it may take me a little longer at times to do something, but yeah.
So you moved on from there, and you're just like, I'm gonna start up my own thing. And how did that go?
No, I actually made a move to another company for 3 years.
Okay.
And the owner of that company, he really enjoyed working on the tools. So I went over there and basically went in and just basically, man, I guess I kind of worked as almost like the owner. Like, I was just drumming up business, keeping guys going and whatever else. He was there, obviously, and had the final say in a lot of things, but he kind of gave me the reins to do what we needed to do. And
cool.
That's one good thing I'll say about him. It wasn't you know, it's a company, I don't know. I enjoyed it there.
Yeah.
Did I like everything that I did when I was there? No, probably not. But there was a bit of a promise of buy-in on that company too, which is why I went over there. I don't know why I was striving for it or wanted it so bad. And again, I look back, I don't know why I choose these things, but I went over to this company, and what he did is he gave me the reins to kind of treat it like my own, and I did. And honestly, took the company and did a couple trips. With that company, we went to Hurricane Sandy in New York. We went to Boston for a nor'easter storm.
Cool.
You know, and those are exciting things, man.
Yeah.
That, like, you went from a company that basically never worked outside the Lower Mainland BC to now all of a sudden kind of going global.
Yeah.
It was friggin' huge, and the guys were totally invested and bought in, and it felt really good, the fact that you were fronting a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But
a lot of people get to see that nowadays, because it seems like hurricanes and these storms are like very, very frequent, and everybody on the news sees it's cool because it's raising awareness for our trade and what we do. Yeah. But everyone's seeing these massive football fields and fields full of line trucks and digger trucks, and we're all there. But like you said, I had that same experience. Small town guy, all of a sudden, east coast of the United States, in a big deal, in a hurricane situation. Thousands of people like me.
Yeah.
It's cool to, like, when you find your tribe, you know, it's like you found your tribe, you hook up with your country, and you've been disconnected from it for so long or something. It's like, hey, my people, like, it's cool. It's cool. Like, it's such a cool experience.
Yeah.
I love that experience.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, I look back, you know, so far, I mean, I'm not finished yet, but like the career that we have, and man, what are the highlights? I mean, there are a bunch that are here locally, but I tell you, man, Hurricane Sandy, I don't think there will be anything like that one. But then going to Boston on the flip side of it, we had a great time. It was just a small 6-7 day trip where we flew in because we drove the trucks from BC to Sandy.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was an adventure in itself.
Yeah.
And
how long did that take?
I was like 5 days and a set of dualies off a digger, whatever. All this shit happened, right?
5 days.
Oh, man.
You don't want to draw short straw on the old 1982.
And I tell you, man, like we came across and we actually ended up getting to Pennsylvania area and then they shipped us up to Boston that first trip before Sandy, So we know, our GPS is set at the time to go to Sandy in New York. Yeah. And now all of a sudden you get to Pennsylvania and they're going to shift you north to Boston because there's a storm apparently coming in. And man, we went up there and at that time, talk about things hitting you in the face and having to deal with things as a young guy. Man, we didn't feel very welcome there. You have some strong union over there, and then now you have some guys coming in.
Even under emergency restoration situation, or what?
Yeah.
Did the storm full on hit too?
No, fortunately, because we could feel the heat there for a day or so, and fortunately the storm never did hit like it was supposed to, and so they did ship us to New York where you did feel that welcome.
A little more welcome.
Come out.
That's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy in an emergency situation. People can't get over something like that. It's probably a little different now.
Yeah, no, like I said, when we went back, so we went to Sandy, I guess that would be October, November, I guess, whatever, but we ended up going back to Boston in February with a whole different experience. It was just a very welcoming and had a great time. One of probably the best trips we've had.
Cool. I landed in, when I was in Hurricane Irene, and then same thing with like a nor'easter or whatever during October, and that was the second trip back. Connecticut was where I landed. It was really cool. Yeah. It's so neat when you go to these storm situations and being part of a crew like that and a restoration crew, and it almost gives you like you flip those orange beacons on the bucket truck, and it's like an all-access pass into people's properties, and not in a weird way, but it's like so neat to see, like especially in Connecticut, like this is where North Americans landed, or Europeans landed in North America, was on that shore. Like there's some serious history in Connecticut and some old rock walls and old buildings and old things that I'd never see this stuff because it's buried behind trees and hills that you'd never get to go see if you couldn't flip those orange beacons on during emergency restoration and get over here. You get waved into the property, right? Like
it's pretty funny.
It's back in the back here. Go back there, and you're welcomed onto. It would never happen like that if you just.
Yeah, and
it's kind of cool.
Through all the experience on the stateside there, I mean, man, oh man, they really do appreciate Lineman over there.
Yes, they do.
It's insane. So we spent. We made our way to Long Island. Like, man, oh man, we worked. Well, when you were there, it's they put you in a small area of a grid, and I tell you, man, they treat us like gold.
I remember small neighborhood, and these guys come out. Hey, what time are you stopping? And we're like, well, we don't really stop. But he's like, I got the smoker on. I got some pig on the smoker. Oh, yeah. You guys are stopping for some mac and cheese and smoked mac and cheese. And oh man, it was deadly. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess we're stopping today. This is awesome.
Yeah, man, it's
super supportive.
It's a great adventure. Yeah. The guys are bought in. Like everyone is just part of it, man. It was a cool experience. We stayed at at the big camp at Nassau Coliseum there. And,
oh, cool.
Man, I tell you, like when you have like 20 tractor trailers with 53 bunks in each one, and like
thousands of your tribe
just hanging out. All, I mean, the experience itself is like no other, right?
Yeah.
So no, that was a good adventure, and you just never know. I mean, back when I moved out, for so many years we were confined to BC. And so you never think you're going to get your chance. I watched Dad go down in those storms. I was kind of envious that it would never happen, and then all of a sudden it has. And you always treat it like it's going to be your last time going, but fortunately we've been
a couple times
now, right? So
it's always it's a big decision to pull the trigger on going from West Coast to East Coast. But it is kind of cool to get that experience. It's a lot easier, like you said, like heading just straight down the East Coast. It's good access to a lot of those storm situations, but it's kind of rare for the West Coast to make its way all the way there.
Yeah.
It's changing a bit, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's
a good,
awesome. On that note, what are some other things? You've been to 1 or 2 rodeos now. You've been to international. What's your take on going to the rodeo? It's just kind of a similar feeling for me. I've been to 3 internationals, competed once, and just went as a chaperone for a couple.
I'm kind of envious.
It's fun. Like,
you
it's
got it
a
under your
good deal.
belt.
Yeah.
You know what? I pretty fortunate. So a couple of those guys in Barry Organ and Walt Greeley there were 2 influential guys in my career at the early stages there. They ended up going to BC Hydro from the contractors, and so they asked me to come down, go down with them under the BC Hydro. Well, we went down, paid our own way or whatever else, but went with all the BC Hydro guys down to the international 2 years ago, and man, it was, you have to see it. If you're a diehard lineman, you have to go there. Yeah. You just have to see it one time. Yeah. The experience, just even in the hotel, man. Like, the hotel is basically designated to the line trade.
The whole area, all the hotels around there.
Insane.
Like, it's the whole Overland Park is just booked for linemen. It's such a good time.
Like I was chatting with you there, the people you meet, you interviewed Dell there, and myself and another guy ended up having a drink there with Dell, and finding out, about her son, and I tell you, it was awesome to hear the story and see what she's doing, and and it's just a ton of passion towards the trade down there is what you're getting.
Yeah, she's a super important person in the industry right now, and it's really cool to see her do what she's doing and carry on with it and be able to do that every day. She puts herself in the situation that she relives it every day for us, and to help us. That's pretty cool. It's pretty good dedication on her part to do
man.
that.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. So through the situation that you had with Olympic Village, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. You called me recently and talked about kind of a fundraiser charity thing that you've started up at one point and it died off a little bit and you'd like to bring it back, but just explain what that was all about to start with and how that came about in the beginning and what it is. I think we should talk about that a little bit because it's kind of an important deal.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a cool thing. So after I just to kind of back it up a bit, after I left the one company there, basically I met my partner Eric and business partner that is. And
Roger that.
And anyway, we ended up starting up True Line Power, which is our company now. And I've always wanted to do something to kind of raise awareness and maybe to help someone out that's been injured in the industry, right? We had a couple guys working with us there, and basically we put it together that we started a foundation or a society of sorts there. It was called the True Recovery Foundation.
Okay.
And obviously the name ties with True Line. And basically what it was for was to put together. I ride. I have a Harley. I've been a Harley guy forever and a day. And so the initial thing was just I was trying to create some kind of like focal point to something to do, whatever. We decided we were going to do a bike ride. But the invite out that just about anyone, even if you never had a motorcycle, to go and raise awareness for injured workers, and within our trade, like try to keep it like kind of cool in our trade. It is a cool trade, so and there's a lot of cool people within, and raise money to basically the burn fund, and then find someone in the industry that's maybe suffering a little bit or whatever or injured, and help them out. It just so happened that the first year that we ended up getting it together, and I was super happy. Like, these guys actually did it. It was my 40th birthday, and I'm talking, so I'm just about 5 years ago. The guys took me aside at like a Starbucks or something and said, "Hey, we have something for you." And they literally had like the poster, like the date, everything kind of set, and said, "Hey, we're doing this because you wanted to do it. And man, it was
That's
probably one
awesome.
of the best gifts a guy could ever ask for, because I was literally, I had this, I spoke about it for probably 2-3 years before. So
What'd you call it?
it's called the Power Ride,
Okay.
but it's with the True Recovery Foundation. So basically what we did for 2 years is we did 2 years consecutively. We raised $19,000 the first year, 17 the second year, and that's this. We raised money. We were sponsored by literally every line company, every line contractor in the Lower Mainland, and so we gave the first year we gave half the money pretty much to a gentleman there. He's an electrician that worked in a substation, and ended up having an incident and losing both arms.
Oh, wow.
And there's a guy with a family of 4, and a wife, and all the bills and all that stuff like everyone else. And so we just wanted to give him something to kind of take some weight off of maybe a trip or whatever.
Yeah.
So we gave him some money towards that, and then the rest went to the burn fund. And then the second year, we had a fella in our industry there who was unfortunately a pole came free from a set of tongs, and he had a bad injury, and we supported him in giving him something that he's passionate about, which happens to be motorcycles, and put a device on he lost movement of his left arm.
Oh, wow.
And put a device on his motorcycle to help him, because
That's so cool.
so it's just a feel good thing for
Yeah.
I think for everyone, and just not us. I mean, for anyone that was involved. So I kind of feel bad about not carried it out the last few years. We went through a few things, and then I know when you mentioned we've both gone through the same thing with a
Yeah.
divorce. I went through all that in the midst of things, and
Yeah.
so between all those things, the sidetrack, it just hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So
That's life. That's the way it goes. It's a super cool cause, and
yeah, so this year we want to fire it back up, get it going again. We've had over the course of the last few years since we haven't done it, literally I've had probably 100 people come up and ask me when it's happening.
yeah.
So it's going to start. We're thinking the last weekend of June right now. It hasn't been official yet, but
Sure.
we'll make sure that so you can get it out to everyone.
Well, if guys are close, Vancouver's in the lower west corner of British Columbia, right on the coast, and it's right above Washington State.
Yeah.
So same thing, Washington State. Explain what the whole deal is.
Yeah.
Maybe what do you do
So-
with the Power Ride?
So what we did there, obviously, is towards a good cause, but you gotta have some fun getting there. So we basically set it up in at a Harley dealership locally here in the Lower Mainlands, and it's literally 20 minutes across the border from Washington. And we start there, and we had a big hurrah there, like a live singer, and full meal deal, breakfast, get everyone going, everyone feeling good. And then basically, I think we've had probably 50 plus bikes, and we traveled to Whistler for the 2 years that we did it. Whistler was very welcoming, which is obviously, you guys, if anyone knows, Whistler's world stage for entertainment, skiing, snowboarding, whatever else. But in the summer months also, mountain biking, whatever. It's one big event town. That's basically
it's
what it
hopping
is.
all year long,
All the
Yeah,
time. There's a big center court there where the slopes kind of end, and there's a couple good bars there and whatever else. And so the city of Whistler wants everything to be big. So when we did our event, they allowed all the bikes to kind of flow into the courtyard. So you have 50 Harleys rolling in,
That's
or
cool.
bikes or whatever. It doesn't have to be Harleys, anything. And then we kind of followed up with the typical burger and brew, and a little more of the event carry on at one of the pubs, and
Yeah.
and once it closed off, everyone for the most part decided to stay up, and you know what, it was just a great weekend as a whole. There was no one had a bad time, put it that way.
Good event, good
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
good cause,
Awesome.
all of the above.
Yeah.
That's cool. When are you thinking about maybe holding this thing?
So this year we're looking at the last weekend of June.
Cool.
We typically did it in August, but it a lot of people are away, and it takes away from a lot of the summer for the people organizing and whatever else. So we thought, let's just change it up a little bit and start it on this, and we haven't really come up with defined details on where exactly we're going to go, but
we need to have the event. Like, it's just, it brings the trade together. Like, you know yourself, like, it's pretty shitty when you get together with all these guys. It's typically at an old guy's funeral that's in the trade.
Yeah.
And then everyone says, "Oh, we should really try to make it a point of getting together for a decent,
something different."
Yeah, something different than a funeral. You know what I mean? So, I mean, all the above. It's a great cause. It's just, we got to do it.
Do you have a spot where people can go to find out information about it yet, or how are you gonna kind of get that together? Obviously, I'll help you out as well.
Yeah.
For any of the listeners who don't follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at Powerline Podcast on Instagram, and I'll be posting information about it too when you kind of get shit rolling together. And
our site, when we did it kind of dropped off the domain, but it was basically powerride.com, and that's basically what we'll end up trying to do again, is just grab the same domain. I mean, it's not a common thing. And then we'll get that up and running, and it should be fairly quick. We're kind of in the process of planning. I was hoping to have it before we got together here, but you know what? That's the way
good.
She goes.
We'll keep them posted as June comes. It's a little ways away still, so
yeah,
that'll
be good.
I'll keep on it. I'm stoked about it. So let's get a bunch of you Americans up there, up here to hang with us Canadians and go for a good ride for a good cause too. It'd be kind of cool to see a good mix.
It's not just about bikes anymore. You know what I mean? Like there's lots of yourself. There's typical lineman, right? Just cars or bikes or whatever. But even just I like to focus this time on people getting their wives and whatever else. So, you know what I mean? Even the kids.
Is it going to be the same thing to Whistler?
We're kind of looking at like a destination. We've looked at different things, but it seems like everyone kind of like the destination. So
for listeners out there who maybe haven't been to the area, like I said, Vancouver's on the west coast, on the ocean. There's mountains there, and the highway that connects Vancouver to Whistler is called the Sea to Sky Highway. You can Google the Sea to Sky Highway from Vancouver to Whistler. You can see all the images, but it is honestly one of the most, you can probably second this, the most beautiful stretches of highway for 2 hours through the mountains and along the ocean. West Coast, pure raw West Coast, and if it's a nice sunny day, there's just
nothing
absolutely nothing like it. So
I mean,
it'd be a good ride, and Whistler's beautiful and Vancouver's beautiful. So if you want to see something different and do something different.
If anyone's ever thinking about something to do, I mean, especially all the Americans, $8, you're coming up for free nowadays.
Shit.
So it is well worth coming up. I mean, if you're ever thinking about coming to Vancouver, and the fact that you get to go to both places there, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so
and part of the brotherhood.
Yeah, man.
Brotherhood / sisterhood.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a good cause.
Yeah, and that's the spin-off, like with True Line there, just to kind of get back into that.
Mm-hmm.
For those who don't know, we're a small company, and basically, things change with the local utility here, so we sub out to the big guys, like all the big contracting companies, and so we're basically buddies with all the different companies because of that, right? And so there's a huge. I think the turnout would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to touch a little bit on that? Like, what's it been like, kind of branching off on your own now and running your own gig? And is there any tips, hints, tricks, struggles, anything you kind of want to talk about with regards to True Line Power?
Yeah, if you want to give up part of your life there, then start your own business.
Like I said before, like what possesses you to want to go out on your own? So, yeah,
I don't know.
But it's something cool though, and there's lots of people.
Man.
There is lots of people out there that are like, you know what, I don't want to work for the big corporations. Like I get that. I want to do my own thing. I got an entrepreneurial spirit. I want to do my own thing, be my own boss.
Initially when we set out there to do it, it was basically just everyone being on a job. And so when Eric and I fired up, it's kind of a funny story too. We ended up buying we ended up buying our first digger out of Portland, just south of Portland, Oregon. And we took a pickup down, and the guy was asking $13,500 for this digger. And and Eric and I went over this thing, I think, for about 7 hours with like fine-tooth comb, pretty much. And he was so tired of us being in the yard, he gave it to us for like 10.5. And on the way up, I think I had to pull over like 3 times, thinking, just ready to puke because I thought I didn't know what we were doing. It was the right thing or not. But you know what we did it. We fired up, and we're pretty fortunate there. One of the companies gave us a job right away, and kind of get us going. And man, it was hard, because here you have a couple guys that know the industry and know how to work.
Yeah.
But we had zero idea about business.
Yeah.
And
like, who's doing the bidding? Who's finding the work?
everything, man. I was fortunate again from that last company I was with. That basically what I did. I did bid on a few jobs, and I kind of got to see what was going on. So, but I tell you, when it's your own, it's almost like an apprentice, right? When you do your apprenticeship and you feel so confident, and the second you top out, now you feel like you just have no idea what you're doing. Yeah. And that's exactly how it felt as a basically being a general foreman to an owner. Yeah. It felt like, holy shit. And you kind of just had to dummy it down again and say, okay, you were fine when you worked for the other company, and you'd bid on the jobs, you end up landing jobs. Why can't you do the same thing for your own? Yeah. And that's basically kind of how you just had to back it up a notch.
Yeah, man.
So we did it, and then literally 3 months after we fired up, hit a couple jobs. The contract with BC Hydro came out, where they were going to start having companies bid on areas. Well, here we are with 3 guys, with basically money out of our own jeans. Well, there was no chance in hell we were gonna get an area, and it was like a huge blow to it's just like we just got kicked square in the nuts.
Sure.
And in all honesty, the first initial thought was, I guess we're packing it in. And you know what? We sat down and thought it out, and we said, you know what? We've been buddies with a lot of guys here, and a lot of them now have moved into management at these other big contractors and whatever else. Like, they know how we work. Like, there has to be a way.
The importance of relationships, right?
Oh, man.
And building those relationships, no matter where you are. And everyone's heard, hey, the industry's small, right? It's small industry. So don't burn your bridges in some places. That had to play a factor, right? Yeah. Doing a good job through all these years of working for these different guys and building relationships. Now you're in a position where it's do or die.
It's the best advice ever. Like, that burn your bridge thing is a true statement, man. I tell you, like, if I had burned my bridge with, the original company and the second company and whatever else, like, we've literally worked for everyone here. Yeah. And it's because of that, like, we never did. We just tried to do a good job for everyone that we worked for. Not everyone necessarily liked what we did or whatever else at the beginning, but people warmed up to it after a while when we were just trying to be so transparent. Yeah. And we still are to this day, like, hey, we just want to do a good job, and we want to just create an income and do our thing and help out whatever company we work for. And I don't know. It's always challenges, man. You always had to say yes sir, no sir, but it's been a bit of a ride. It's been good. Yeah.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you kind of want to touch on, or anything else you got on your heart and chest that you want to get out there and talk about?
I just think
I know you're a big supporter. What I've seen too, and really appreciate about you, is you're a big supporter in growing the trade and putting back in, not just taking from it, right? You're part of the apprenticeship program that we run in British Columbia, and you're always involved with the electrical contractors associations and things like that to really get out there and support and put back in, not just take from. And I think that's the way I was raised was like that as well. And I know my old man's like that, like in a big way as well. Yeah. And I've always appreciated you for that and seeing you in and putting into that, which is pretty cool. So what's your...
Yeah, you know what? You know what? Your dad said it best, man. So just kind of back your father, I met him years ago, and he was always he's a real quiet man. And you know what? I've kind of got to know him really well over the years, and now that we've been in there, and that's one thing he's always said: you kind of get what you put in, and you kind of know. But when you hear someone with experience like your dad, oh man, it does it. you really do. Like, I keep saying to these young guys, like, man, oh man, there's so many things you can do, and it just doesn't. It shouldn't be always about you. It has to be about everything. You know what I mean? Like, what would the industry be if you never had people that were actually interested in taking care of it?
Yeah.
So, like, the apprenticeship thing has always been a big thing for me. I think probably because I had such a great apprenticeship, and I want to see these other young guys grow up with the same. But then I don't necessarily want to see the deadbeats coming in that are in it for the dollar either. Like, that's one thing I also learned is, if there's one piece of advice is, if you're chasing the dollar, then you're in the wrong biz.
Yeah.
If you do the right thing, the money will come. So, like, just do the right thing. Respect the trade, respect the guys that you're working with, and make it better. But if you just coming in here for a free ride and you're just looking for the dollar, and the first question that you're asking is what you're getting paid and why, you know, like, I did a lot of shit for free, man. Starting like getting the businesses going, like, and I tell you, man, it's the respect first off that you get from other people, and then plus the, you know, monetary. I mean, it follows suit.
Yeah.
For what you put into it.
Yeah.
So, just, I don't know. And sometimes you might feel like you're getting the short end of the stick, but you know what? It does come through in the end. It really does if you're just good at what you do and you're a good person.
Yeah.
So,
don't just take. Just give back to, like you just said.
Man.
Give back. Don't just take. Don't just chase the dollar.
Yeah.
If that's your motives, like, so be it, and that's what you're gonna do. You're not gonna get very far, and it's gonna be a miserable ride. It's much more satisfying putting back, even if it's a little bit. Put back into it and do what you can to help out.
Yeah. No, man. It's that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give, in all honesty. Like, we have, you know, a small company like us. We like giving back to our guys what we can. We don't have the big lavish shop and the, you know, the all the newest equipment and all that stuff. You know, we try our best to do whatever we can, and then we try to do a lot of small things for our guys to make them feel appreciated. And then in turn, you know, we hope that they feel the same. And you know, we have a great group of guys, and it's we're trying to instill that maybe a little bit of old school mentality into them, where you kind of think back.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I went, a lot of times now, like, people just expect us as an owner to always yank your wallet out and pay for everything. But I can remember when I worked back in the day, like, it was 1 for 1. Like, the owner would maybe pay for something, but I would pay for, you know what I mean? It's just, you just always think, man, there's, as much as you're doing for us, you know, the companies are doing for you also.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just, that doesn't matter how big you are. Like, you could have a massive company. Like, your company's doing you a pretty good deed there. They're putting food on your family's table and providing a good wage and all the goodies there, and nice equipment and clothing and blah blah blah. It's just, man,
it's a great way of life, and it doesn't cost a lot. Once you're into it, it doesn't cost a lot into it. Like, look, you're not going to university or college and dropping $100 to $400,000 on an education and being that far in the hole. And we all know that out there, but you don't just have, you can't just know it. You gotta, like, realize it and show some gratitude and be grateful for that opportunity, because it is something different. It's something special, and it's not what most kids get the opportunity to do.
Yeah, I mean, again, man, it's just a cool trade.
Yeah.
And here you are, you're living in this world of, like, you know, you're doing everything that's freaking cool, honestly, man.
Yeah.
Like, you're big trucks.
Or
like,
have the
dude,
access to it.
Oh, man, like, you know, again, just kind of going off again on a tangent there, like, you know, besides the Sandy thing and all that stuff, you know, we went to Hurricane Irma in Florida, and you go to friggin' the fires in California, all this shit that we're doing, man, it's friggin' unreal.
Yeah.
And, like, people forget about it, man. I don't know why. They just forget about it. And these young guys and the new era, they have to just really bring it back and think about what they actually have and what they're doing. Like, it's totally different.
Yeah.
If we never had this when we started, man. And, you know, I don't look at myself as an old guy, but, like, when you have 25 years about in the trade,
Oh, dude.
you're starting to become, and when you look back on what it is now, like,
When I look back and I go, okay, well, the iPhone 7, or not the iPhone 7, the iPhone came out in 2007. Like, that's when I'm like, I guess I am getting a little bit, like, lots of these guys don't even realize
Yeah.
Like they grew up going to school as 8-year-olds with cell phones and the internet in their pocket, and like you didn't have that. It was just before it, but we didn't.
Yeah, like I say, going back to the Lloyd Freak days there back when I started. I mean, I can remember Lloyd was the only guy at the company with a phone. He had this big bag phone, like it looked like a big Sears catalog with a phone attached to it with a cord, and we thought he was so freaking cool. And so yeah, it's just come such a long ways, but the fact of the matter is, it's still the line trade, and you know, even though we have nice equipment and all that stuff and all that new gear, like it's still the same trade.
Yeah.
So
There's
respect it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Ted, and thanks for being on the show.
Hey, buddy, thanks for having me. That's awesome.